Good evening and welcome to Perspective. Pakistan is among the countries most vulnerable to climate change. Global warming, melting of the Himalayan glaciers and threatening volumetric flow rate of many of the rivers in Pakistan are likely to impact millions of lives in our country. We'll be talking about the impact of climate change and our technical and financial capacity to deal with it. I have with me today Nadeem Ahmed. He's an environmentalist. Thank you so much for joining me. Shafqat Saab, he's also an environmentalist. Thank you for giving us your time. Nadeem Saab, what are some of the major challenges because of climate change, and how do you think we can address them?
As you mentioned in your remarks that Pakistan is most vulnerable, which means we are exposed to a lot of threats. And all these threats combined will affect all sectors of our society, economy, and of course our ecosystems. Right. Now the climate change phenomena, as we know, that we are not the greatest emitters. So we are not emitting GHG emissions into the atmosphere. Our share is less than 1%. On that front, we are not really concerned.
Right. Let's talk about that more in detail, and I'll just come back to you. Shafqat Saab, what do you feel are the main challenges? Very mainly, what are one or two main issues that when we talk about climate change crop up?
Yes, I think the issues are more than two, as it
I
affects.
meant just to start off with
it
generally.
affects every walk of life, every field of economy, and every sector of economy. But the main effect, the major effect that are facing our communities, that farming communities in our rural areas, because their livelihoods are directly under threat because of climate change. The second major challenge is frequency of disasters.
But even, I mean, other than the fact that we are faced with challenges, how aware are we with regard to climate change as a country and as a people? And how aware are we that, it's a main issue and we have to deal with it? Nadeem Saab.
Generally, climate change has been considered, or even environment to the extent, is a technocratic subject. So it has, typically some scientists and some environmentalists, they have been discussing and trying to solve the problem. So one of the challenges that has been globally as well as in Pakistan, that not many decision makers and many people or sector across the life, they don't know much about climate change. So my understanding is the climate change is not well known in this country. Only we have.
But why have we publicized it enough as a threat to the normal people? I mean, we are an agro-based economy and an agro-based country. So I mean, are agriculturists aware that it might be a major problem and that it's an issue that has to be dealt with? Shafqat Saab.
Interestingly, the educators are not much educated about this phenomena. We name agriculture department, other even the ministries and line department directly concerned with this phenomena are not that much aware of the impact of the climate change. But interestingly, the rural communities, we are more, in general we term them ignorant of issues, but they are very much aware of the climate change impacts because they are directly facing these impacts. They might not be knowing exact terminologies we are using, like resilience building or adaptation or things like that.
But because they're on the ground, they're more aware.
Because they are on ground and they are facing it, and they know what kind of threat they are facing and what kind of threat are posed by climate change to their livelihoods, and they are very much concerned about because the level of preparedness is very low. And it is predicted that the situation is not getting better, but it will get further deteriorate in coming years.
Nadeem Saab, will the situation get worse? As an environmentalist, what do you feel? Are things going to get worse with regard to climate change?
Yeah, and remember the climate change frequency and occurrence of extreme event is increasing. Earlier we used to have a super flood every 30 or 20 years, but now we have the possibility of having it every 10 years, like the 2010. So by 2020, we're likely to have another super flood. Now, if we don't prepare and the situation gets worse, remember we are very rapidly growing population and very rapidly urbanizing country. At the moment, we are more than 50% urban, and 70% of our urban population is in 9 cities. So a lot of pressure on natural resources. So if we don't prepare, we will end up having many people living in poverty.
Right. So it has to be dealt with on a priority basis.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Shafqat Saab, climate change mitigation, Pakistan greenhouse gas emissions are also very low.
Truly.
And that's a good thing or a bad thing? With
good
regard to
thing in
climate
terms of our contribution to this disaster, overall disaster-like situation, but of course we are not, it's not voluntary, it's because we are not that much industrially developed. But
it's a good thing for us as far as climate change is concerned.
It's good thing for this whole planet. But our contribution is very little, so it doesn't make very significant difference. It's now the global industrialized world that needs to seriously work upon it and to reduce mitigation, overall reduction of greenhouse gases. But ironically, the situation.
So they increase as the urbanization increases and industrialization increases. These gas emissions increase.
Exactly, it's mainly because of we use fossil fuels and sort of other every kind of industrialization have its consequences. And
so what are the solutions?
Solutions are I think energy, alternate energy, better energy, efficient
solar power is
efficient
also
use
a
of energy, and of course solar is one of alternate energies. And but what I was actually pointing out is, ironically, we are not major contributor, but we are among the countries having worst impact of these climatic changes globally, and among first 7 countries.
But does that have to do with our region where we are in particular?
No, because we are not that much prepared. Our lack of preparedness induced more disaster and more, you can say that, first of all, lack of knowledge, and that actually we are lacking resources, basically.
But can't we get funding from better equipped nations and better, the more developed nations with regard to our climate change issues, and we can build up our capacity as far as dealing with climate change is concerned?
Basically, that's our right, and it's obligation for the global world and developed world to help us out in mitigation and dealing with this situation. But it depending on the negotiation power and tactic and skills we have at the level we are dealing with these issues. And COP21 is one of the you can say was major test of our negotiation, and it is perception that we are failed to plead our case properly in that global platform, at that big platform. So we need to.
Saab, why haven't we had success? Just because, like Shafqat Saab is saying, we haven't been able to plead our case, or are there other reasons also?
Yeah, I agree with Shafqat Saab. And there are other reasons too. Globally, how much we depend on other resources, it's too much. Technologically, we are not advanced, so when it comes to develop alternative energy sources, it's more expensive for us rather than the other country. So the switch from fossil fuel to alternative will take some time, and they will take sustained efforts from the government and investment. Now we are running out of investment. We are a developing country, so and to get finances from half a dozen international funds, we are not well prepared. The largest is called Green Climate Fund, and Green Climate Fund will provide developing countries $100 billion a year from 2020.
Right.
Now Pakistan's preparation are not up to the mark, and so far we don't have any national entity to tap that fund. So we have to work hard to prepare ourselves to negotiate, and to negotiate more share, but also to prepare ourselves to get window of opportunity of getting financing from the existing sources.
Right.
And this will take some time, and Ministry of Climate Change is the focal ministry for that.
But we have a federal ministry
Yes,
for this,
exactly.
yet this is also now after the devolution of a provincial subject. So how have the provinces developed their own policies also now, or are they developing under the auspices of the federal government?
It's in the process, but till now provinces have not been able to replicate that policy at federal level. Federal level, the role of federal government is now, federal ministry at federal level is now as sort of advisory. They cannot dictate provinces what to do or what not to do, but they can provide them technical assistance and knowledge sharing. The provinces are somehow seems now quite keen to establish these mechanisms and at local level, and but process is quite slow. It's painstaking, and the level of threat is quite bigger than the level of willingness to redress that.
Right. But even our climate change policy is obviously not a policy that can act in isolation, right? Nadeen Sam, it has to be taken in with regard to all other policies like energy, like the other policies also.
Yeah, it's a very cross-cutting, and just not national policy, even subnational and international.
Right.
Because we sign more than 100 multilateral environment agreements, we have to report to that. Now, as I know,
how does that work? How do we do it? Like, is it an annual thing that we report back to them, and how does it work?
typically we delay. For example, second national communication, which is the most fundamental climate change progress for a country to be communicated to United Nations, is due for more than 8-9 years now. We only submit one. Other countries have gone up to fourth communication.
Right.
So that process, and at the end of the day, it's all boiled down to the capacity and technical ability. Now, as you asked about provincial policies, Ministry of Climate Change has more as now is a coordinating body. Now, provinces getting more sense about climate change, and at the moment there are 3 provinces who are building or developing their climate change policy, Sindh, Punjab, and KPK. Now, the action is happening at the ground. So the provincial policies will be very crucial how as a country we respond to the climate change, because after the 18th amendment, many of the departments are now with the provinces. Agriculture,
right.
Be health, be education, even
Right,
environment.
right.
Now, these provincial governments, sooner they start acting in more effective way, better we will cope with the climate
And
change.
speedier also. You
Yeah,
said
of
that we need to be speedier. Shafqat Saab, is it true that it affects the poor man more?
Yes, somehow you can say that it hit more already poor.
I mean, surely we're all exposed to climate change. So how does it affect the poor man?
We all
more
are
then?
exposed to this, but the urban level of understanding and awareness in urban communities, there is no sense of urgency we have seen till now. But the rural communities, they are directly hit by their crops, their livelihoods are getting destroyed. They are now more prone to and more vulnerable to poverty and disasters. And likewise, we can observe that last 3 or 4 years we have seen number of disasters and frequency of disaster. Then there is another problem is now changing pattern weathers. Monsoon pattern is changed, and likewise harvesting and sowing patterns of somehow it's part of resilience building, the knowledge about new pattern, adaptive patterns of sowing and harvesting. But we are not able to communicate and educate those communities that are directly hit by these disasters and direct climate change impacts. So,
but you said that the rural population is better knowledgeable about climate change than the urban
Then urban,
population?
because urban since
Because
it's
they're more
far,
exposed.
it's they are
More
more
vulnerable.
exposed, and urban communities think it's not in fact real case, because we have recently seen heat wave. Last year it has caused more damage. This year we have some level of preparedness and we avoid a big disaster. But no, this is not an isolated phenomenon. The heat waves we have seen in Karachi and some other coastal areas in Sindh, and the experts are predicting more such problems for urban communities as well. Now the other impact of these climate change realities is the prices of food, basic food commodities, and ultimately when our agriculture is getting destroyed, and our rural farming
Right, of
community,
course, it will
so
lead to price
it will
hike.
ultimately lead to price hike.
Price hike, and that impacts. That has its own impacts and its own disadvantages. Other than promoting solar power or improving the energy efficiency, what more can we do, Nadeem Saab? How do we go about, like you said, I'm just to elaborate, how do we go about resilience building, like Shafqat Saab was saying?
No, resilience is basically how we are capacitated to deal whatever climate effect brings to us.
Right.
The best way from my own experience is to bring local government on board.
Right.
They are missing in action for several years, and from the countries where I have seen several best practices where they have effectively managed climate change,
Right.
the role of the local government is very crucial. Because at the end of the day, they are the first who can see what's happening, and they are the one who can respond, and they are the one who can respond quickly and efficiently rather than something mobilized from federal capital or something.
And and before we talked about how they have to be more speedier and they have to act sooner than.
Yeah, because if there is a flooding situation, a local government or Tehsil administration can handle situation much more quickly.
They're on
and
the
efficient.
ground, they need to know, and they need to be able to act much faster. When we talk about crops and how it's affecting us rurally, what does alternate crop pattern mean? Does it mean that how can you explain that a little, and how will it change things for the better for us?
Yes, I think that is because this problem is multi-sectoral. So you need to take on board your agricultural department, your agricultural experts, and the other, as Nadeem has very well pointed out, that local communities, because they know their problems, and climate change impacts are diverse and different for every region and communities. So the communities can suggest better that what are their actual needs to mitigate this, to respond these challenges.
Right.
So sowing pattern and harvest patterns with we have demonstrated an organization, Oxfam and some other civil society organizations have recently demonstrated that it could be successfully modeled, and you can be adaptive with new sowing and growing patterns according to the change in weather conditions.
So to a layman, it would mean that if you plant a certain crops in the winter and certain crops in monsoon, then you will have to change that because the weather's
yes, exactly.
changed. That's
and the same is about seeds, and same is about what kind of water solutions you have alternative. Now you can have drip irrigations, like a drought-like situation. The areas that are prone to drought or water shortage, there is drip irrigation, and there is other many solutions that need lesser water. So that communities now need to be adaptive to these modern agricultural methods.
But because of climate change, a very real issue that we are facing now, Nadeem Saab, is scarcity of water also, and that is also impacting our rural crops and rural agriculture. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it's other way around as well. Sometimes we have too much water for a very short time, so which is called flood.
Because of the floods,
and
right?
we don't have storage capacity to take it for sustained time. And the other situation, we don't have water. Now, in both cases, the first likely impact is our agriculture, which is our food security issue. And now, at the moment, we are practicing very climate insensitive cropping. For example, in rice, we use flood irrigation.
Right.
And which means if you don't have water, we can't do it, and you can't do it, you cannot have really rice productivity as you expect. Likewise, for the wheat crop, if monsoon pattern changes, which is changing, we have water or heavy rainfall at the time where we shouldn't be having it, which means loss of crops and damage on a wider scale. And for the last few years, we have seen that climate change has affected our crop production, both rice, cotton, and wheat as well.
So we need to have effective storage when there's more water that can then be utilized when we face scarcity of water.
Yeah, we have to work on the both sides. We have to manage our water very efficiently because it's declining. As you know, we already water scarce country. Per capita level has decreased below 1,000 level, which is universal benchmark.
Right.
Likewise, we also have to invent certain crops and wheat which are sensitive to climate, more prone to heat, and require less water.
But it depends on the area also. Some areas you can't cultivate. For example, there are some areas which are good with rice and some are not. So you have to see what kind of soil you have, and other factors will impact it also.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you have rice in the wheat area or the cotton area. It means that you have a rice which requires less water. You have a cotton. We have cotton which is more resistant to heat or climate changes.
Right.
So it means you adapt to the situation or the environmental changes,
Right.
and you also continue practicing efficient use of water, which is declining all the time for us.
Right. And this is what we call climate smart agriculture, right?
Yes, you can
Shafqat?
say that. Yes.
This is how we will dealing with it with regard to the weather and the changing climate patterns.
Exactly.
So that is how we will move towards the smart climate agriculture. Can you tell us
That
a little
is
more?
one terminology you can say.
Right.
There are other, but you can say that if you are adapting according to climatic changes, and you can say that you are going towards climate smart agriculture. So
what are some of the nations that are that developed nations that are dealing with it in a much better way than Pakistan?
Basically, they have it's matter of resources and it's matter of knowledge, and we lack in both, and proper research on. We have one university, agriculture university, that is providing, I think, fair enough research at local level at issues, but we are not using our research capabilities in practical terms to use that at ground. We are not going out of theories yet. So the difference is they are the people, the universities and experts, academia in in global world, they are using their research and for the solution of their practical issues. One. And then they have resources to translate that vision into actuality or practicality. So I think basic thing is
who is doing it much better than us? Can you give us a name? Which country is doing it a lot better than us? And does that really just have to do with their technical and knowledge capability, or is it more about the fact that they're not as exposed also because of the region?
I think every country in the world is now exposed to climate change impacts, and you can say the America was hit by climate change pattern, frequent cyclones, frequent floodings, and in different part of it. But main thing is preparedness. The level of preparedness is better. You can respond the impacts better. So
Nadeem sir, have we started very late? Is that one of the issues also? Maybe we should have started much earlier with this whole phenomena that's why we lack the kind of preparedness as Shafqat Sahab was saying.
Yeah, I think it comes to the very first issue that we discussed. It's not a public commodity or public phenomena. It's technocratic. Now,
Right.
unless we are still not, political parties, they don't have in their manifesto, will do manage climate change or all this thing. So unless it's more widely known, unless it's become a public property, the whole climate change phenomena will continue to be delayed. And yes, we are delayed. Many countries who have introduced very good practices for some time now, and they are getting their benefits. And in climate change, we say if you delay an action, you increase the cost of doing it for the future.
Right.
And if you delay an action, you're not prepared. When you are not prepared, you are hit, you have to spend more. And you know, all the time we have spontaneous and reactionary policies.
Right.
And there's a flood, so we spend too much money, we
Right.
give compensation and all sort of things. Even less than quarter of the money that we spend on reactionary response or emergency response, we spend that money in our preparedness, we'll be better off.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, we're not catching the
basically
trend.
we just need to prepare ourselves more. We need to know when, what kind of weather pattern, what kind of weather we might have, and we need to be more prepared. But this very, from what you said, I gather that it's really has a lot to do with the kind of educating our people, making it a real issue also. Isn't that true?
And then taking ownership of, because now we have few examples of in some areas, some districts, even provinces don't have climate policies yet, but in some areas local adaptive action plans have been developed in 6 or 7 areas I know in Punjab, with the participation of local communities, with the participation of government line departments, with the participation of other stakeholders. The local action plans have been developed. And it's been becoming a platform of knowledge sharing and expertise and resource poolings. And now those local action plans are demanding appropriate budget allocations as well from the province's government. So once you are identifying, you are able to identify the real problems at local level, then you can ask for funds from your governments. So I think there is knowledge gap, but when all stakeholders are sitting together and finding solutions, and I think this gap could be meted out.
Right. What do the rising sea levels have to do with the overall change in climate now?
First of all, the coastal cities will be hit, and a majority of the coastal cities around the globe and in Asia, out of 20 large cities, 7 in Asia and 2 in South Asia, Bombay and Karachi. Now, so once there is sea level rise, which means your river delta is going to like blocked, and you have sea water intrusion, which
Exactly.
of course going to damage whole infrastructure that's built around the coastline.
Right.
So that's where we have a big challenge to cope with, to even to the existence of the city. You have heard report earlier, I think few months back, where there was a study that by 2050, Karachi, half or some portion of it is going to be drawn with the sea level rise. And so that's the one phenomena where we have to deal with the infrastructure and the cities that are on the coastline. And second, there are a lot of ecosystem that we have, and a very rich natural resource along the coastline. If the sea level were to rise, we have very much high chances of losing all those inhabitants and fisheries and that natural resource stock of fishery, which is again a big livelihood issue for coastal communities and their earning. So with the sea level rise, obviously we are in trouble, and we have a long coastline. Not to mention our Gwadar port is just going to be the big shining star for our economy.
Right.
And if we are not, our port is not sensitive to the sea level rise or climatic changes, we have trouble in hand.
Another relevant,
Yes.
quite relevant thing is another phenomena, that is urban climate migration, climate change migration. Because of this sea water level intrusion, sea water intrusion, as Nadeem has mentioned, the community is now lacking access to sweet water, and they are now forced to flee from their native towns, and they are now moving toward urban centers, and it's increasing the pressure on all infrastructure of already under pressure urban infrastructures. And likewise, we are now losing agriculture and all sort of economic activities in those areas where people are now living.
But how do
because
we
of-
combat then? How do we deal with that? How do we deal with the problem with the water?
I think we have first we have done the damage because deforestation and mangroves cuttings, and these were safety valves for us. And now we have ruthlessly destroyed our
Do you
own.
think we've moved more towards urbanization than, you know, the cities and towns, and that's led to the issue also?
That's led to the issue, and then our practices that are not quite environment friendly, that have induced more disaster.
Like what
like
kind of practices
cutting
particularly?
of trees, cutting of mangroves, and coastal belt mangroves are considered as safety valves. They were blocking impact of climate change and other to themselves, because now the safety valve is nowhere, so you are facing those impact directly. So we need to think, I think, climate friendly, ecosystem friendly practices. We have to focus on that to mitigate it in long term.
But like Nadeem Saab mentioned earlier, we don't really have much of a choice because we are a country with a huge population. So we have to naturally have space for people, and for that also, you know, we have to develop towns, we have to move towards urbanization. So how do we balance it then?
It's, you know, we never had a planned city after Islamabad, if I'm not wrong. And 200,000 houses are by month probably we need to cope with the population rise, which is going to be 230 million by 2030. Now, how to balance is basically we have to, as I said, climate change is a cross-cutting. If you don't do at one front, you will lose on the other front. So it has to be a very collective effort. Urban development, as other country has been doing, you know, there's a lot of pressure of migration on the big cities. So if you have a cluster of small cities around a big city where you can commute people very easily,
Right.
like Japan, I used to live there, and I wasn't living in Tokyo, I was living somewhere else. But I can come to the city in less than half an hour, rather than somebody commuting inside. So people start going outside, and these are the planned city where you have their waste managed properly, the water supply is efficiently prepared and set up.
And then the ways of coming and going should also be there.
Yeah.
Every conveyance,
And
you know,
mass
all
transit.
transit.
It has to be mass transit. Plus, we also have to have a sustainable consumption and production pattern, which mean we have to consume food that is less CO2 emitter. Also, we have to produce
like for example, what food? What kind
for
of
example, meat is more CO2 stress footprint than vegetables, and also we have these big cars and vehicles, rather than we can have a culture of moving on bicycles
right.
or mass transits. We produce things using a lot of coal and fossil fuels. We can have an alternative energy efficient option. For example, our government buildings and large buildings, they consume electricity more than they should have been doing it, because just because the infrastructure the way we build our house is not climate friendly or our environment friendly, we end up using a lot of electricity,
Right.
lot of energy,
Right.
which collectively cause our CO2 emissions to more than we should have been doing.
Shafqat, with regard to energy, like Nadeem Saab is saying, energy of course is a huge issue also, but why have we not moved towards solar power as rapidly as perhaps we should have to combat these major issues like climate change, like scarcity of energy? Why haven't we done that?
I think I'm not an expert into energy
right,
sector,
but we'd like to hear your thoughts anyway.
But yes, there might be some constraint in resources, or might be that solar energy is still not at that level where you can meet the needs of a big population. So it's still at experimental level, I can say, and overall. So,
but that's really just with regard to our country, really our region. It's not at an experimental level at other places.
But still, its overall contribution into energy supply is, I think, quite low.
Right.
But we can find other alternate solutions. In long coastal areas, we can tap windmills that have huge potential. But I think everything need investment. So we need to ask for more climate change investment in Pakistan, even in energy sector and alternate energy sector. The more investment we will have, the more we will be able to deal with this situation.
What are some of the sources we can tap for investment, both internally and externally?
Internally,
where do we get, basically, where can we get funding from globally?
Globally, the main one already Nadeem has mentioned. The fund he has mentioned has huge potential to support Pakistan if we are pleading our case properly. Then we can ask for potential investor who are willing to invest in Pakistan energy sector. But depending on how an investment friendly country you are, so you have to revisit your policies toward investment, and
of course other issues will play into it.
Other issues related to like safety, security, and everything contribute into investment culture. So you have to.
Right. And Nadeem sir, when we talk about disaster risk reduction, what do we mean exactly? How do we reduce disaster risk?
Just to add to the previous question, Pakistan shift to alternative energy is slow because first solar is expensive, and it's more expensive than the hydel and the other options. Also we have not been able to technically advance ourselves to have wind energy. So on that, it's more a technical issue that we were lagging behind.
But do you think that we're ahead? We're a little more like we're 2 steps, perhaps, let's say 2 steps ahead as far as the solar power is concerned as an alternate energy source than we are towards the wind power.
Oh yeah, of course. Many countries have altogether changed their energy mix, and we haven't. We're still almost the same percentage that we had 20 years ago. Actually, hydro percentage is decreasing, which is alarming. We need to invest more on hydro. Now, as we change our energy mix, by the time we get to that particular destiny, we have so much demand growing, we again back to zero.
Right.
So we have to plan more on a longer term rather than this piecemeal approach where we fix something and suddenly we found that our energy demand is rising than we predicted. So it's more a governance issue at the end of the day. And if you see, Pakistan is our Vision 2025, where we have that the government say the average Pakistani will have per capita income around $8,200 something. And if we not climate resilient, we cannot adapt. Our per capita income is going to be $6,000 or something, which means we are deficit of $2,000, and at the end of the day we are also approaching our 100-year as a country. So if we have to think about whether at the age of 100 Pakistan is going to be a very poor country with half a population and living under the poverty line, or we have to achieve the vision that we have. So it's to me it's now becoming a governance issue. And sooner we have it in our political domain, the issue, the sooner it's better.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Nadeem Saab, Shafqat Saab. Thank you so much for your expert opinion. Clearly, climate change is a huge issue for us globally. It is an issue for Pakistan also in particular. We are hit by it, and we need to be strong, and we need to herald all the problems that we are facing as far as climate change is concerned. We need the federal and the provincial governments together to make sure that all our crops are safe, our agriculture is safe, our energy sources are better managed. Thank you so much for joining me today on Perspective.